My son is not breathing.
Your son is what?
He's not breathing.
He just was unconscious.
Okay, do you have the paramedics on the way right now? Are you right there with him?
Yes, I'm right here.
Shut up! Get your building now! Shut!
Some criminals cry in court, others beg for mercy. But then, some women show no remorse at all, smiling, laughing, or sitting stone-faced as their horrific crimes are laid bare. From the Cynthia Cdebaca chilling case to Pearl Fernandez's horrific act, these women committed brutal crimes, and their lack of emotion disturbed entire communities. Let's begin.
Somebody had to stop you.
I did.
Okay, it's okay.
Is he dead? He's gotta be dead.
You think he's dead?
I hope so.
On February 11, 2014, 66-year-old Cynthia Cdebaca spent her day at a restaurant, a casino, and a coffee shop, smiling as if nothing had happened. But behind her calm demeanor, she was hiding a chilling secret. A secret of a brutal attack that would leave her family shattered. That morning, Cynthia and Jawar Estacio, her son-in-law, were alone in his home, preparing to attend a spelling bee for his daughter. While getting ready, Jawar harshly remarked about Cynthia's outfit, telling her to change. This moment seemed to push Cynthia over the edge. She went upstairs to her small living space, known as the granny flat, grabbed a .38 caliber revolver, and walked back down. Without hesitation, she shot Jawar 5 times in the backyard. But he didn't die. Struggling to survive, he tried to crawl back inside the house. Instead of stopping, Cynthia went to her car, reloaded her gun, and returned. She fired 5 more shots. Jawar was still alive, desperately trying to escape. Cynthia reloaded once more and fired 5 more shots. In total, she fired 15 times, with 12 bullets hitting him. Their neighbor heard the gunfire and called 911.
Oh, another gunshot. Another shot.
I hear it.
Another one.
Remorse, okay.
After killing her son-in-law, Cynthia showed no signs of remorse. Instead of calling the police, she went for breakfast at a local Denny's. Then she spent some time gambling at a casino before heading to her favorite coffee shop, where she was finally arrested. When questioned, she told authorities that Jawar had been rude towards her daughter, Laura Salinas, and her grandchildren for 13 years. She claimed she could no longer watch them suffer and took matters into her own hands. Her defense attorney argued that Cynthia snapped after witnessing years of mistreatment. He urged the jury to consider a lesser charge, manslaughter, instead of first-degree murder. But prosecutors saw it differently. They argued that Cynthia's actions were cold and calculated. She reloaded her gun twice and made sure Jawar was dead before leaving to enjoy her day as if nothing had happened. Throughout the trial, she laughs as she has no regret for her act. A jury found Cynthia guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison.
You're good looking.
Cynthia's daughter, Laura, who had just lost her husband at the hands of her mother, was torn. This is a tragedy. I love my mom. I loved Jawar. There's no win here. It's just complete sadness. But Jawar's family saw things differently. His sister said, "I would describe my brother as a fully devoted person to his family. No one can ever take away his vibrant spirit, his love for family, or his laugh. Those live on in our memories today."
My brother, as someone who's deeply devoted to his family, definitely a mentor to me. He's a very generous person, just a guiding light for me.
Even in tragedy, there were different perspectives. Some saw Cynthia as a protector, while others saw her as a murderer. But in the eyes of the law, justice had been served. Cynthia Cdebaca's remorseless and horrific act appalled. Our next case shows a bizarre turn. Suppose what if a key witness to a murder wasn't a person, but a bird?
As if this case wasn't bizarre enough, it takes another turn. It was quite unbelievable.
He just kept going over and over again, the same and it sounded like 2 different voices.
Glenna and Martin Durham seemed like an ordinary couple living in Sand Lake, Michigan. They had been together for years, sharing a home and a life, until 2015. Something terrible happened. Martin Durham was found dead in their home, shot 5 times. At first, it seemed like a tragic mystery, but soon the shocking truth would come to light most unexpectedly, through their pet parrot, Bud. That night, the quiet of the Durham's home was shattered by the sound of gunfire. When police arrived, they were met with a chilling sight. Martin lay lifeless, his body riddled with bullets. Nearby, Glenna was still breathing, a gunshot wound to her head. It looked like a desperate attempt to end her own life, but against all odds, she survived. As investigators worked to piece together what had happened, Martin's family noticed something eerie. Their pet parrot, Bud, had begun repeating a phrase over and over again. "Don't shoot."
Shoot! No! Shut up! Get your over now! Shoot!
According to an ornithologist, it's common for African parrots to mimic people's voices. The parrot was repeating Martin's last words in his voice, which became a key piece of evidence in the case. As investigators searched for answers, they uncovered a chilling piece of evidence: suicide notes written by Glenna herself. The words on the paper painted a dark picture. It seemed she had planned for both of them to die that night. The reason? A heated argument over money, a struggle that had been weighing on their marriage for far too long. But fate had other plans. While Martin lost his life, Glenna survived. When she finally recovered, something was unsettling. Glenna Durham was not immediately charged after the incident due to a severe head injury she sustained during the shooting. However, as the evidence from the parrot mimicking Martin's final words became clear, the investigation revealed the shooting was a homicide. It wasn't until months later that murder charges were filed against her, and the entire process took 2 years to complete. Her cold demeanor during the trial sent shivers through Martin's family, who had already endured 2 painful years of waiting for justice. To them, her silence spoke louder than any words ever could. The case went to trial, and after a day of deliberations, Glenna was found guilty of first-degree murder. Though the parrot was never officially used as evidence, his chilling words strengthened the family's belief in her guilt. Glenna was sentenced to life in prison. She showed no emotion, no grief, no sign of remorse.
2015 before turning the gun on herself. She survived, though. The case gained national attention because the couple's pet parrot, Bud, was the sole witness.
As for Bud, the parrot who may have witnessed it all, he now lives with Martin's ex-wife, Christina Keller. Martin was married to Christina before his marriage to Glenna Durham. He continues to talk, but no one knows for sure what he truly remembers from that tragic night. Durham's case shows how a parrot repeating chilling words gives unexpected pieces of evidence. The next story reveals how jealousy takes the life of a woman.
You're here for a warrant right now, I guess. Are you familiar with what you have going on?
I have no idea. You're in handcuffs in front of downtown Austin. It was incredibly...
On the night of May 11th, 2022, something terrible happened in Austin, Texas. Professional cyclist Anna Mariah Mo Wilson was discovered unresponsive in a friend's home. At first, no one knew who could have done such a thing, but soon all eyes turned to one person, Caitlin Marie Armstrong, a yoga instructor and real estate agent. Mo Wilson had traveled to Texas for a race in Hico. Hours before she was killed, she met up with her friend Strickland for a swim at Deep Eddy Pool and later had dinner. Afterward, Strickland dropped her off at her friend's house and left. That was the last time anyone saw Mo Wilson alive. Shortly before 10 p.m., Mo's friend came home and found her lying on the floor, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. She had been shot in the head and chest, and according to the autopsy, some of the shots were fired after she was already on the ground. At first, police had no suspects, but then security footage near the crime scene revealed a black Jeep Grand Cherokee arriving at Wilson's location moments before the murder. That Jeep belonged to Caitlin Armstrong. When questioned by police, Armstrong refused to answer. Instead, she rolled her eyes when asked about Strickland's relationship with Wilson. The police had their prime suspect, but due to a technical issue with an unrelated warrant, they had to let her go, and that's when she vanished. Armstrong knew the police were onto her, so she ran. Using her sister's passport, she fled to Costa Rica, where she tried to start a new life. She dyed her hair, cut it short, and even underwent plastic surgery to change her appearance. She told people she'd been in a surfing accident to explain the bruising on her face.
Not knowing she'd probably been dead for 45 minutes. Then she runs to Costa Rica, had plastic surgery, on the beach teaching yoga, while the Wilsons are trying to pick up the pieces.
For 43 days, she managed to stay hidden. However, U.S. Marshals were determined to find her. They placed an ad on Facebook, looking for a yoga instructor in Costa Rica, and it worked. On June 29, 2022, they tracked her down at a hostel and arrested her. After being brought back to Texas, Armstrong pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. Her trial was delayed multiple times, but finally, on October 30, 2023, it began. While in jail awaiting trial, Armstrong made another desperate move. On October 12, 2023, she was taken to a medical appointment outside the jail. As officers led her back, she made a run for it. She didn't get far. After a short chase, she was caught and taken back into custody. Wilson's friend said, "I want you to know that I fought for Mo with everything that I had that night."
I want you to know that I fought for Mo with everything I had that night.
On November 16, 2023, after weeks of testimony, the jury found Caitlin Armstrong guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 90 years in prison. She'll be eligible for parole after 30 years, but many believe she will never walk free again. Mo Wilson's mother said to her daughter's killer in court, "You killed her earthly body, but her spirit is so very much alive, and you can never change that."
You killed her earthly body, but her spirit is so very much alive.
Wilson was a rising star in the cycling world, loved by many. Her life was taken away because of jealousy and obsession. Armstrong thought she could run from justice, but in the end, she couldn't escape the truth. Now, she'll spend the rest of her life behind bars, while the world remembers Mo Wilson, not for how she died, but for how she lived. Our next case explores a chilling truth. When love turns lethal, deadly consequences occur.
My kids were asked, "Where's Auntie Cabria?" I didn't know how to explain to them where she was.
On a cold November night in 2019, 20-year-old Cabria Arnold had just finished her shift at a Mayer store in Detroit. She was excited about the future, her dreams of becoming a registered nurse, her love for softball at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and, most of all, the joy of expecting her first child. But that night, as she walked to her car, everything changed. She never made it home. As she walked towards her car, the quiet night was shattered by gunfire. The echoes faded into silence, leaving Cabria laying on the cold pavement near Pilgrim and Bentler Street. She had been shot multiple times. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Her life, and the life of her unborn child, had been stolen in an instant. News of her death spread like wildfire, reaching her family most heartbreakingly. The youngest of 4 sisters, Cabria was their light, their joy, their baby girl. Now, she's gone. Investigators soon discovered a shocking motive behind the murder. Gabriel Brantley, a 28-year-old woman from Southfield, had been involved with Cabria's ex-boyfriend. Authorities believe jealousy fueled her rage. Authorities testified that a woman resembling Brantley fired at Cabria, not once, but 3 times. After a long legal battle, Brantley was found guilty in late 2023.
As far as this point is concerned, the jury got it right, and you're going to get every day that you deserve.
On January 5, 2024, Cabria's family faced Brantley in court as she received her sentence. Life in prison without parole for first-degree murder and an additional 15 years for causing the death of Cabria's unborn baby. In their emotional statements, Cabria's family expressed their sorrow and anger. Her older sister, Tiffany Arnold, spoke of the deep pain they felt every day. "We miss our nephew, who is supposed to be here. My son didn't have his cousin to play with," she said tearfully. Their father's statement was just as powerful. "No punishment will ever compare to the pain and torture you have inflicted upon us. There is no real justice, only incarceration for a sick individual, a monster." Even after being convicted, Brantley refused to accept responsibility. When given a chance to speak in court, she claimed she was innocent. "Cabria and I hung out a lot. We went bowling, skating, to the movies, and out to eat. I am a lot of things, but a murderer I am not," she said. But the judge and jury did not believe her and sentenced her to life in prison, but the defendant showed no guilt for her act.
As far as this point is concerned, the jury got it right, and you're going to get every day that you deserve.
Cabria's family will always feel the void left by her absence. They will never hear her laughter, never see her fulfill her dreams, and never meet the child she was so excited to bring into the world. Instead, they visit her grave, holding on to memories and wishing for the life she never got to live. Justice may have been served, but the pain of losing Cabria will never go away. Our next case is even more disturbing. It's not about revenge or jealousy. It's about unimaginable cruelty towards an innocent child.
She can change her story as many times as she wants, but the reality is she participated, she directed it. Who knows? I mean, she did what she did and she knew better.
On May 24, 2013, emergency responders rushed to a hospital in Palmdale, California, carrying the fragile body of an 8-year-old boy. His injuries were so severe that doctors struggled to comprehend the horror he had endured. His name was Gabriel Fernandez. Behind closed doors, his mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre, had turned his home into a house of torment. 2 days earlier, They had mistreated him so brutally that he lost consciousness. Gabriel's struggles were not hidden. For 8 months, teachers and others raised concerns about his well-being to social workers and law enforcement. Scrapes, bruises, and other injuries were clear signs that something wasn't right. However, despite these warnings, officials failed to intervene. Gabriel remained in the home, and the challenges he faced continued. Before living with his mother in Aguirre, Gabriel was cared for by his great-uncle and later by his grandparents. His life took a difficult turn when Pearl regained custody in 2012. From that point on, he endured a lot of hardships, facing constant mistreatment and being forced to do things no child should ever experience. At night, he was forced to stay inside a small cabinet. His mother and her boyfriend treated him unkindly, often making fun of him and causing him harm. Aguirre, in particular, seemed to single out Gabriel due to his personal beliefs about the boy. On May 22, 2013, the cruelty reached its peak when Gabriel was punished simply for not putting away his toys. This time, the injuries were too severe. He became unresponsive, and Pearl finally called 911.
My son is not breathing.
Your son is what?
He's not breathing.
He just was unconscious.
Okay, do you have the paramedics on the way right now? Are you right there with him?
Yes, I'm right here.
Oh.
Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe to heal. He was declared brain dead and sadly passed away 2 days later. His autopsy revealed signs of serious harm and neglect, showing the hardships he had endured for a long time. Pearl Fernandez and Isuaro Aguirre were arrested the day after Gabriel was taken to the hospital. Initially, Pearl faced felony child endangerment, while Aguirre was charged with attempted murder. However, when Gabriel died, the charges escalated to first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture. At trial, prosecutors described Aguirre as pure evil. The jury agreed, and the judge said, "The conduct was animalistic, but that could be wrong because even animals know how to take care of their young." He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Pearl, on the other hand, took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but showed no shame for her heinous act.
The mother of 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez, who was beaten and tortured to death in 2013, will stay in prison.
Gabriel's story is a painful reminder of what happens when a child's cries for help go unheard. His tragic death shook the nation, sparking outrage and calls for reform in child protective services. His short life was filled with suffering, but his memory continues to inspire change. No child should ever endure what Gabriel went through. His story must never be forgotten. In honor of Gabriel, people celebrate his 18th birthday in remembrance. Up next, Sydney Powell, a case that shocked those closest to her as a family dispute escalated into a horrifying act of violence.
Please! Man! Never. Take her.
The home that once radiated warmth and laughter had become a place of nightmares, its walls stained with the memory of an unthinkable crime. Sydney Powell, 23, sat in the courtroom, her face sealed by an act that shattered the quiet peace of Akron. Just a few years earlier, she had been a promising college student, a young woman with dreams and ambitions. But in March 2020, everything took a turn. Overcome with rage, she attacked her mother, striking her with a cast-iron skillet before stabbing her repeatedly. Sydney had always struggled in school, and despite her efforts, she was eventually dismissed from college. Afraid of disappointing her parents, she kept it a secret, pretending everything was fine. She maintained the lie, hoping to fix things before they discovered the truth. But secrets have a way of coming to light. One day, her mother, Brenda Powell, learned the truth. A dedicated child life specialist at Akron Children's Hospital, Brenda was known for her kindness and compassion. She had spent years helping children and families through difficult times, always offering support and understanding. When Brenda confronted Sydney, fear overwhelmed her. What should have been an honest conversation between mother and daughter turned into a heart-wrenching moment that changed their lives forever. A heated argument spiraled out of control, and in a fit of rage, Sydney grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet and struck her mother. But Brenda didn't collapse immediately. She turned, pain and shock in her eyes, and that was when Sydney made a devastating choice. Overcome with fear and rage, she ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and attacked in a frenzy. But when the rage faded, reality struck hard. The once warm and loving home now felt cold and lifeless. Sydney stood frozen, staring at the horror before her. When investigators arrived, they were stunned. Friends and family struggled to understand what had driven her to such an extreme. As the truth unfolded, it became clear that buried emotions, years of tension, and one fateful moment had led to an unimaginable tragedy. A once unbreakable bond had been shattered forever. Sydney's legal team argued that she suffered from severe schizophrenia. They claimed she experienced a psychotic break and was unaware of her actions, pleading for a verdict of not guilty because of insanity. However, the jury disagreed. They found Sydney Powell guilty of 2 counts of murder, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors argued she was fully aware of her actions, and despite the tragedy, justice had to be served. On a somber day in court, Judge Kelly McLaughlin sentenced Sydney Powell to 15 years to life in prison. As the verdict was announced, tears streamed down her face.
Sentence you to an indefinite sentence of 15 years to life in the Ohio Department of Corrections.
Though her defense team plans to appeal, the ruling brought closure to many mourning Brenda Powell's loss. Sydney's case serves as a tragic reminder of how hidden struggles can lead to devastating consequences. A mother lost her life, a family was shattered, and a young woman's future was ruined in an instant. Some believe Sydney should have received mental health treatment instead of prison, while others argued justice was rightfully served. Regardless of the perspective, one thing remains clear. Brenda Powell was a beloved mother and community member whose life was cut short by unimaginable violence. Powell's tragic story left an entire nation in disbelief. The next case reveals a heart-wrenching act by a mother that no one could have predicted.
My heart and my mind are consumed with despair, pain, sadness, grief, unceasing anguish, and extreme remorse.
On April 18, 2019, Joanne Cunningham called the police, reporting that her 5-year-old son, AJ Friend, was missing. She claimed she had put him to bed the night before, but by morning, he was gone. A massive search was launched in Crystal Lake, Illinois, quickly drawing national attention. Initially, authorities treated AJ's disappearance as a routine missing child case. However, as investigators dug deeper, inconsistencies emerged. Searching the family home uncovered disturbing conditions, broken windows, filth, and an unbearable stench. But the worst was yet to come. 6 days after AJ was reported missing, his father, Andrew Friend Sr., finally confessed. Overcome with guilt, he led investigators to a desolate area, 10 miles from their home. There lay AJ in a shallow grave and wrapped in plastic. The search had ended, but the grim truth was just beginning to unfold. An autopsy revealed AJ had suffered severe head trauma. Investigators worked relentlessly to reconstruct his final moments, uncovering a devastating reality. On April 15th, AJ made a simple mistake. He soiled his clothes. Instead of comforting him, his mother inflicted a cruel punishment. She forced him into a freezing shower where he shivered and wept. Rather than wrapping him in warm clothes or tucking him into bed, she sent him to sleep cold, wet, and alone. By morning, AJ was gone. His short life, marked by suffering, had come to a tragic end. The painful truth ensured his story would never be forgotten. His suffering was no longer silent, and justice was finally on its way. Cunningham was arrested and charged with the unthinkable crime of taking her own son's life. When she stood before the judge, she admitted what she had done. The courtroom was silent as the judge spoke about the agony and suffering that little AJ had endured. He had lived a life filled with neglect, fear, and mistreatment at the hands of the person who was supposed to love and protect him the most. Despite everything, the defendant wept in court, saying she wished she could bring AJ back. But her words could not undo the years of mistreatment or the grievous end that he faced. The judge, unmoved by her tears, made it clear that there would be no second chances. She received a 35-year prison sentence, ensuring she would never harm another child again. She would also serve 3 additional years under supervised release and be required to register as a violent offender against youth. At the time of condemnation, tears streamed down her face as she realized what she had done wrong.
I'll never be able to justify anything, nor do I ever want to.
AJ's story is a heartbreaking reminder that every child deserves love, safety, and protection. Nothing could ever erase the pain of his short and tragic life. Prosecutors described AJ's life as one filled with misery. He was born into addiction. His mother tested positive for the substance at birth. Child Welfare Services took him away, but later returned him to his parents, believing they had changed. But the mistreatment never stopped. AJ's story is an aching reminder of the dangers of child maltreatment and the need to protect vulnerable children. Though his short life was marked by suffering, his memory calls us to action to ensure no child endures the same fate. Our next case reveals how a trusted figure betrayed her own family for money.
Ka ti-family hinkwato kusukela ka family ya ka Mabasa ya ka Mashego.
Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu was a respected police sergeant in South Africa. She rose from humble beginnings, leaving her home in Bushbuckridge to build a better future in Johannesburg. After joining the South African Police Service, or SAPS, she was stationed at the Tembisa police station. But beneath the uniform and badge, she concealed a chilling secret. She was a cold-blooded killer who murdered her own family for financial gain. Between 2012 and 2018, Ndlovu meticulously orchestrated the murders of 6 family members and her long-term partner. Her motive was chillingly simple. She wanted to collect life and funeral insurance payouts. Over the years, she pocketed approximately 1.4 million rand, or roughly $93,000, from these deaths, using the money to fuel her gambling addiction. Her killing spree began on March 2012 with her cousin, Madala Witness Homu, who was found beaten to death. His murder earned Ndlovu over 131,000 rand in insurance payouts. In June 2013, she poisoned and strangled her sister, Audrey, collecting more than 717,000 rand from various policies. That same month, her niece, Zanele Maltha, was brutally beaten to death, netting her an additional 119,840 rand. But Ndlovu wasn't finished. In October 2015, her boyfriend and the father of her child, Maurice Mabasa, was found in Olifantsfontein with 76 stab wounds. His murder brought her another 131,000 rand in insurance claims. 2 years later, in April 2017, her nephew, Mayeni Mashaba, was murdered just a day after meeting with her. Her final known victim was Brilliant Mashego, her nephew and the son of her murdered sister, Audrey. He was last seen alive in her company on January 22, 2018. 2 days later, his body was found in Bushbuckridge. For 6 years, Ndlovu deceived investigators and insurance companies, but in 2018, her reign of terror came to an end when she took her crimes a step further. She attempted to hire hitmen to set her sister Joyce and her 5 children on fire inside their home. This time, however, the men she contacted were undercover police officers. During her trial, she broke down, realizing there was no escape. The officers had recorded her giving detailed instructions on the gruesome crime, sealing her fate. In 2021, Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu stood trial for her crimes. The evidence against her was overwhelming. She had targeted her own family, people who trusted and loved her, just for the sake of money. The court found her guilty of 6 murders, as well as charges of fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to 6 concurrent life terms for the murders, plus an additional 30 years for her crimes.
I accordingly impose the following sentence on accused. The accused is sentenced to life imprisonment on each count.
Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu's story is one of greed and betrayal. She saw her own family as nothing more than paychecks, leaving devastation in her wake. Families were torn apart, children lost their parents, and trust was shattered beyond repair. Her case is a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest threats come from those we trust the most. Rosemary's cold-blooded pursuit of wealth through murder is chilling. The next case explores how lies can lead to an unfathomable tragedy.
We found the woman this morning on the side of the road, and her baby had been removed from her body, and then you show up with a baby.
On a quiet morning in October 2020 in New Boston, Texas, Regan Simmons Hancock, a young mother, was at home with her 3-year-old daughter, eagerly awaiting the arrival of her second child. At 35 weeks pregnant, she had no idea that a friend, Taylor Parker, was about to arrive with a chilling plan. Taylor had spent months pretending to be pregnant, faking ultrasounds, hosting a gender reveal party, and convincing everyone she was expecting. But there was a major flaw in her scheme. There was no baby. As her lies began to unravel, her desperation grew, and she resorted to extreme measures to make her deception a reality. What should have been a peaceful morning turned tragic, forever altering the lives of those involved. In the quiet of her home, Taylor, driven by a disturbing motive, launched a violent attack on Regan, causing unimaginable pain. As the situation unfolded, Regan's 3-year-old daughter played nearby, oblivious to the horror unfolding around her. Despite Regan's strength and courage, she and her unborn baby could not survive the ordeal. Thankfully, her daughter remained unharmed. After stealing the baby, Taylor sped away, attempting to make it look as though she had just given birth. She was soon pulled over for driving erratically. When officers approached, they saw a newborn in her lap, but something was off. The umbilical cord appeared to be coming from her pants, a feeble attempt to simulate a recent birth. She was taken to the hospital, where doctors quickly uncovered the truth. There was no evidence that Taylor had given birth, and the baby wasn't hers. Meanwhile, back at Regan's home, the authorities discovered the horrifying crime scene. After the trial, Regan's mother, Jessica Brooks, said, "Now we can stop crying." She described how her daughter had still been alive, fighting for her baby while Taylor brutally attacked her.
heavy burden feels lifted. I feel like now we can start trying to heal. We don't have this over our heads. We know where she's going to be. We know where she's at. And
prosecutors exposed Taylor's months of deception, showing how she manipulated those around her into believing her fake pregnancy. Even Regan's husband, Homer Hancock, admitted that Taylor was somewhat of a friend. She had even taken their wedding and engagement photos. Despite the defense's argument that Taylor's family and friends should have noticed the signs of her fake pregnancy, the jury showed no mercy. Given the gruesome nature of the crime, they sentenced her to death. Taylor became emotional as she heard her sentence, but she had to face the consequences of her actions. Regan was a loving mother, wife, and friend who trusted the wrong person. The fact that her daughter was in the home during the crime makes the tragedy even more profound. A husband lost his wife, a little girl lost her mother, and a baby was never able to take its first breath. Taylor Parker now sits on death row, awaiting the ultimate punishment for her heinous crime. From calculated revenge to crimes fueled by jealousy and obsession, these women displayed no regret for their horrific actions. But in the end, justice prevailed. Their victims may be gone, but their memories endure. In our next video on screen, we'll dive deeper into more terrifying cases and the sentences that left the world in disbelief.